So the first thing I wanted to do, just to kind of introduce everybody, uh, this is part of the TGDA. I know that I've promoted this event to a couple of places that are outside of the TGDA, so I want to take just a couple of minutes to make sure people are aware of the TGDA. The TGA is a nonprofit and industry association dedicated to supporting tabletop game designers, industry professionals, and enthusiasts of all types and all different kinds of tabletop games. Our main focus is really growing the local game design community, fostering collaboration, and promoting Australian-made games both locally and internationally. We've done that in a lot of different ways throughout this year, and I won't bore too many people with all the details, but we've been able to get different games showcased throughout different Australian conventions this year, as well as over internationally. We had, I think, 14 different games showcased over at Essen. We've also got a number of other events that we actually work with people on to collaborate across different things. And really, we're just trying to grow the industry here in Australia. One of the things now that many of you guys are here in Discord, if you guys are not familiar, we also hold regular playtesting events here. So those are fortnightly on Wednesdays from 6 to 10 p.m. It fluctuates a little bit between daylight savings time, but you can sign up your games in advance. You can also just come on the night and just play. If we have space, you can even coordinate a game kind of ad hoc on the night. It's a really casual environment, a lot of fun. It's suitable for games of all stages. I've personally brought games where my very first playtest that wasn't kind of by myself was here. And it's a really supportive and friendly environment, kind of with feedback from all different kinds of designers. You can see the channel online playtesting sign up, where you can actually see the links to go to the Google Sheets where you can sign up. There's also a playtesting lobby where you can have conversations, and I can take people through more of an overview of the Discord channel in general if people have questions. I also wanted to touch base quickly just on the membership for TGDA. We end up having a lot of different benefits for our members, and I should also distinguish there's a lot of people in our community. We have a very large and active community. We're at almost 44,500 people across different channels. And we also have a paid membership base that we actually provide a lot of additional benefits for. So that includes discounts on software. One of those partners that we work with is actually Dexterous. We've got a number of events that you get access to, both free and discounted tickets, other professional opportunities for showcasing your games, general industry representation, and the ability to vote at the annual general meeting, which is actually coming up on this Sunday. So if anybody is particularly interested in getting involved, I recommend it at any time of the year, but in particular this week, if you're able to become a member before the end of Friday, you'll also be able to participate and vote on who the leadership is and some of the issues that are going to be addressed at our AGM, which will help set the stage for the rest of the next year. So with that in mind, assuming there's no extra questions or issues, I want to introduce our speaker tonight, Gil Walker. Gil's been a long-time part of our community and supports us. He's actually also one of our playtesting hosts, contributing to kind of coordinating some of those. He's also the founder and, as far as I understand, lead developer for Dexterous, and that's going to be what he's going to be talking about tonight. I'm really excited to hear this talk. We've been trying to coordinate this for a number of months, probably since the beginning of the year in various times. So with that in mind, I'm really proud to make sure we introduce Gil, and I'll turn it over to you, Gil.
Thanks for coming, guys. Thanks for having me, Ryan. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Today, I'll be talking about the prototyping journey. So, a bit of how to use Dexterous and also just a bit of the behind the scenes journey of actually making this tool and where we're headed in the future as well. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Gil. And if you don't know me from a bar of soap, I did bring a little bar of soap there as reference. So maybe by the end of the presentation, you will know the difference. So what we're going to be looking at today is the origins of Dexterous, prototyping with Dexterous. So taking a card from kind of an idea phase, like this one over here on the left, to something that's more finished and pitchable, maybe even publishable on the right. We're going to look at the journey so far, and we're going to have a question and answer at the end. So yeah, like I was saying before, if you do have a question, would love to hear that at the end. So let's just jump right in. So we're going to look first at the origins of Dexterous. So it started out with me and my mate Doug, who's in Newcastle. He's a coder, engineer. He's really into maths, whereas I'm more of a teacher, more of, I guess, the humanities side of things. And we love making games, and we really wanted to smash out a few different prototype ideas, but it was actually just way harder than we thought it would be. I was using tools like Word, and then I moved on to InDesign Data Merge, and I ran into this day that was just particularly painful, and it was actually took us 6 hours to try and get this InDesign Data Merge just from the idea. We kind of had it all ready to go, and then it was kind of the end of the day and we ran out of time to playtest, and that was so frustrating. I was like, okay, let's see if we can make something that's a bit better. Existing tools at the time were not really specific to board games, like InDesign, for example, or they were clunky or they had a huge learning curve. So we wanted to make something that was specifically geared at speed of prototyping. And I told my wife at the time, look, it'll probably take a few months. 4 years later, here we are, and we still have lots to do. So yeah, so that's kind of a bit about where it started. And next, I'd love to show you just kind of, again, coming back to that speed idea, just some of the prototyping that you can do with Dexterous. So I'd like to take you through 3 stages here. So we're moving from like a first draft prototype stage. So this might be like solo testing. This is kind of the idea validation stage where you're testing, is this idea actually worth pursuing? So we want to make something super quick. And then to the functional prototype. So that's like, okay, the idea is good. Now I've got some friends who actually want to play test it. So it has to be somewhat presentable, somewhat clear, but we're still saving on ink. And then to stage 3, which I'm calling a pitch ready prototype. It's essentially just something that's a bit more presentable that you might present to a publisher, for example. So let's start with stage 1. In stage 1, we're going to make some cards that are just text, no images yet, and just a shape icon. And I'll show you how to print and export that to PDF. So let me just jump onto my other screen here. Dum-de-dum. Okay, so I'm over here in Dexterous in the app right now, and I'm going to create a new component. So a component is just like a set of cards or tiles or tokens or player aids or something like that. It's essentially a set of things that follows a visual layout. So it's telling me here I'm going to need a layout, so that visual template for the component to follow. I'm going to create a brand new layout from scratch here, and I'm going to go ahead and choose a poker card. But I could do, obviously, tiles or tokens or that other kind of thing as well. So I'm just going to make 3 text zones. So I'm just going to click up here, and this is creating different areas of the card that I'll then be able to link up later to data, like a table, and essentially fill this template with data on a card by card basis. So I'm going to go to this one down here. I'm going to call this description. This is going to be my main ability text. I will center it down here like so. And I'll get a title. So I'll name this one title. So these little nodes over here, these are just the representation of what I've got here. It's a good idea to name these so that you don't get confused later on. So I'll just put that there. Maybe I'll dial up the font size a touch. Maybe I'll make it bold. And then I'm going to make an icon. So I'll give it a background color, and I'll make it a shape as well. I'll go to the default text and I'll just put like an X there or something that I can clearly see is not a number, but is kind of ready to be filled. and I'll just put some placeholder text here, like title goes here. I'll left align that. And that is probably all I need to do to make a serviceable layout that I could test a starting concept for a simple game. Let's say my game is going to be like a role selection game, a bit like Citadels or Coup, or Werewolf or something like that. So you might make a trick-taking game. You could have a very similar layout to this, something that's quite straightforward, quite simple. I have gone out here and now I'm back in the component editor, and you can see I've got a default card here. And as I click here to get more cards, I'm seeing new rows come into the table below. The table below is actually linked to the different zones. So as I'm clicking here, you can see the title on here is mapped. So if I type in Empress here, and if I type in Sentinel here, you can see that I'm actually directly editing the card. So it's actually quite fast to go ahead and make changes. So you go ahead like this, you can click on the zone, it'll highlight here. So I might make the Empress's cost 5, 4, 3, something like that. I can click this button to get a different number of copies. So if I want 3 Sentinels and say 3 traders, I'm going to go ahead and print this now to PDF. So I'm going to click export. I'm going to export the current component, and this will take me to the export page. And from the export page, I can actually see, I can actually export to PNG or PDF. Okay, so here we go. I'm laid out on the page, and I can just export this straight to PDF. So you can see there, I can just print and play that straight away. I probably would give these cards borders so that I could see what I was doing. But if you wanted to have it white like that, you can actually just add crop marks, and that will be good to go there. So that is phase 1. This is the idea behind this phase, I guess, is that you want something that's super quick, that you can just test out with yourself, maybe on TTS. Maybe you want to print it out and just play solo at the table, but something that is just quick to validate, I suppose. So I'm going to go back to my slides here, if everybody can see that. I think so. And now let's assume that, okay, the idea was really cool. I'll play it now with friends. I need to this prototype a little bit. So what are we going to do? We're going to add an image. We're going to make some areas of the card a bit clearer. We're going to integrate with Google Sheets. We might add some quality of life features like text shrink, and we might add some ONS auto rendering. So let me show you how that might work. So back in Dexterous here, I'm going to go back to the layout editor. So once you've made these cards, you can edit them here. So I'm going to edit, go back to the layout, and I'm going to give this title zone a background color. So I'm just going to go in here. I'll choose a light purple. I'll give this cost. I didn't actually name this zone, so I'm going to go ahead and name it cost. And I'll give it a darker background. I'll move this title over a bit because I want it to overlap, something like that. And I'll put a shape on it. So something like this. And as you can see here, there's a bit of a problem in that the text is being overlapped there. So I'm going to go ahead and add some padding. Padding is like kind of the inner margin, so I can just bump up the left padding a little bit and the text will start there, which is great. That's what I want. I'm going to go ahead and bump up the font size on my description zone here. I'm going to hold down Control click, and I'm going to click all 3 of these zones. This is a new thing that we've added recently. I'm going to select a kind of, I don't know, a sci-fi-ish kind of font, maybe like Space Grotesque, something like that. This is looking pretty good. The next thing, the really obvious thing that we're missing here is an image. So I'll add an image zone. And this is different to the text zones in that we won't just fill it with text, we'll actually fill it with images. So I'll just put it there, I'll just center it. This is all pretty rough, mind you, but we're getting a basic structure in place here. So if I go to the image zone, you'll see it's just got this default image, which I don't actually want. Instead, I want to upload my own images. So I'll create a folder and I'll name this Galactic. The name of this game is going to be Galactic Council. So it's going to be people in space trying to resolve conflicts and diplomacy. I've got a folder of images on my other monitor here. They're these amazing images that my wife drew for me in the last week. I do actually have these on a Google Drive, so if you want to play around with these or even use them for your own project, go ahead. That's what they're there for. We'll have a session at the end. So if you want to have a go yourself, feel free. I'm just going to select all these images in the folder, and I'm just going to drag them straight into here like this and upload these images, and they will upload in the background, so they'll come through momentarily. In the meantime, what I do want to do, just in case I've got images that aren't exactly square, I'll set this zone to contain. And you can actually see there, any image that might be wider, for example, will now be contained in this area. So nothing's going to get cut off or clipped. And I'll call this zone image. Okay, so I'm doing pretty well. Oh, the last thing I wanted to do is add a border. That's right. So I'll add a solid gray border. That looks pretty good. And here we are. So what I'm missing, of course, is the images for the different characters. So I can click this image and that will highlight a image column here, which is different to the text columns that I had before. I'm going to select an image here. I'll go to my folder. Hopefully the images have come through. Yep, they have. So I'll click here and I'll just go along and I'll choose the images for my character. So you can see that's pretty quick, but it can get even quicker with a tool like Google Sheets. So you'll see that the table here is controlling all my data. And I've made the same thing in Google Sheets here. So you can see I've got the same data, the same columns that I had in Dexterous. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to connect this to Google Sheets. So it's really easy. You just have to go File, Share, Publish to Web. We're going to share not the entire document. We're just going to share this one, this Sheets tab, which is cards. And we don't want a web page. We want a CSV, which is comma separated variables. So I'm just going to grab that link. So I've copied that link. I'll go back to Dexterous. And here there's a little link icon. I'm just going to paste the link in here, hit import, and that should bring in all my cards. But hold on, something is not quite right. See, these three images are fine, but these ones haven't come through for some reason. Now, if you're really eagle-eyed, you may have already picked what happened here, what the problem is. Dexterous is expecting these columns to match the columns in Google Sheets exactly. So if I come back here, I'll see, oh, I've actually named this column IMG instead of the full word image. So all I need to do is go back to Dexterous, or Google Sheets for that matter, go to the zone and just name it the same. So if I hit image there, that's now named the same, and Google Sheets should be able to import. So I'll just go back here. Okay, yep. So now if I hit this little button down here to refresh the CSV, if I hit that, it should all refresh. And we've got these beautiful cards that are ready to go. So can we see any problems with these cards? They're actually looking fairly decent. Imagine if we had dialed up the font size a little bit more on this title. I think I actually picked the right number there accidentally. So I want to create a problem here. Okay, here we go. See Fleet Commander here. He's gone off the edge. So have some of these ones here. So if you have that kind of thing, there's a few nice little features that we can do in Dexterous. One of them is just text shrink, and that will automatically shrink your font size. This is a real pain point we had in some of the other apps we were using. So now if I go along, Fleet Commander will fit. We could add some padding there to make that look even better, but essentially it will fit now within the text. So that's really nice. And the last thing we want to do is add some icons. So a lot of these games tend to have icons or resources on the cards. And we don't want those icons to show on every card. So how do we conditionally show some of them? Let me show you how. So I'm going to create a image zone here. I'll make it smaller. I'll just call this like icon 1 or something. And then I'll hit Control D twice, and Dexterous will just increment those for you. So I'll just line these up like this. Again, I'm not going to get this perfect. Or am I? Let's see if my OCD kicks in. There we go. So I've got my 3 icons there. And let's say actually, I'm going to shift select these. I also want to give them a border, a gray border, and I want to round the corners like this. Now, if I go back to the cards, you'll see here, I click these icons, and again, I can fill it with, in this case, my faction icons. So the queen, maybe she's actually aligned to all the factions. So I'm just going to go ahead and connect these up. Now that the default folder is set, by the way, I can just go along and click these. But the problem that you can see is that we've got this default image here on all of them, which is not what I want. However, if I go to the layout and I select these and I just turn off, if I turn off the default image like that, the image isn't there, but the border is, which is annoying in this situation because it's like, if I go back to this character here, I actually don't want to see these images at all if that's not there. Luckily, there's an easy answer to this, and that is just this button up here. So we don't want to show it, we don't want to hide it. By default, we just want it to be set to auto. And that just means if it has a value in the table cell, it will show. If it doesn't, it will automatically hide. So that's really good. We've got these icons that are showing now and hiding for the characters that don't have them. There is a bit of a problem though, in that I would love this icon here to be centered. And it's not, it's off there to the side because we've actually got the space for these icons is being taken up, if you like. So we're going to fix that in the next stage. So let me go back to my presentation now. And we're going to go to stage 3. So this is pitch ready. So now we're going to add that nice background frame behind everything. We're going to add some icons to the text. We're going to use a flex container to center those faction icons, and we'll export to a digital platform like TTS, which is Tabletop Simulator. Okay, so that shouldn't take us too long now that we've got these bones in place. So I'm going to go back to the layout editor. I'm going to create a new image zone here. I'm going to stretch it all the way across the card. I'll just call this AG or background or whatever you like, really. And I'm going to select a background. I had this one commissioned. It's not actually for this game, but I thought it actually looked pretty cool, and it's in the sci-fi theme, so I think it'll fit well. Of course, it's above all the other zones. So all we need to do is over here on the panel on the right, drag it down, and that will make it be at the bottom. So you can see here my title. I need to change it to fit with the rest of my card now. I'm going to just turn off the background entirely, but the font color is wrong. So I'm going to go to the font. I'm going to use the eyedropper. So this is a little trick. You can use the eyedropper to match some of the colors that are already in your layout, and that will give you a much more cohesive look. For example, I can move by pixel by using control and arrow keys. So I'm just going to get it perfectly aligned there. I'm going to do the same with this cost icon. So I'll go ahead and remove the background, move it into there. I think I will change that font color as well to the same blue. Oopsie. And I'll dial it up a little bit. It's a bit small. I'll move these faction icons down a little bit. I'll actually make them a touch smaller. Oops. Actually, do you know what? I'm going to select these all. What's this guy? 42. So I can use these hotkeys down here. So I'll make them 30 height and 30 width. And now we're going to solve that issue that I was talking about before with the centering. So how do we do that? So I'm going to drag them roughly into position here. This is my description text. So I'll make that. Again, I really like this glowing color here. I'll bring it in a little bit so it's not going to be too close to the edges there. That's pretty fine. I might center it though. Dial down the font size just a touch. Okay, so as for the string problem, we need to create a special zone for this. And so this is part of the responsive design that we want to implement here. It's a flex container. And I'm actually going to drag the 3 icons into the flex container. So 1, 2, 3. So now they will move with the flex container, and the flex container is actually controlling their position. So I'm just going to size the flex container down here like this. And I've got these different settings here. I can actually put a gap in between the icons so they go up there just a little. But one really cool thing is you can see here, if I press this little I button on the side, actually, do you know what? There we go. Maybe that's a bit easier to see. If I press this little I button on the side here, this zone is going to hide itself. But watch the position of these other two. If I click this now, they actually move into the center. And if I hide another one, this one will move into the center, which is perfect. That's the kind of responsive design that we want. So I'll just go ahead and I'll hide this border of the flex container. So even though the flex container is applying its logic here, I don't actually want it to be seen. I want it to be invisible, just working its magic in the background, if that makes sense. So I think we're pretty good to go. Maybe I'll make this slightly smaller. I think that's a little bit too big there. Again, this isn't perfect. This is just to show you, okay, it's pretty easy to get something that looks quite good quite quickly in Dexterous. So yeah, so there you go here. We can add a fair number of icons here, and they will always be centered, for example, like this. So that's really nice. The last thing that we want to do in this stage is, I think it's add icons to text. Yep. So let's say, for example, some of these cards might have, like this one here, has +1 to House Arras. Now, often when players are playing a game, yes, they can read the text, but it's actually much clearer if they can see a visual icon there. So you can click here in the table, and you can actually just insert an icon like this. Just click that, and then I can go ahead and I'm going to select that. And if you can see it here, I'll just zoom in a little bit. You can see that icon has been inserted in line. And now I can go ahead and get rid of this House Arras completely, for example. So just +1 to that house. So that's super nice and easy way to get inline icons into your text. So let's export this to TTS. So I'm going to go ahead and again export the current component. This time I'm not going to go PDF. I'm going to go a Tabletop Simulator file and then click Create TTS Files. What this is doing now is it's actually creating a JSON file that has all the data that you need for this deck of cards. And it's downloaded there. And all we're going to do is move it into a certain folder. So you can see here, I've downloaded it here. I'm dragging it into the TTS folder, which I've just got bookmarked there for easy access. So that's all done. And now if I go to TTS, which is right here, tiny TTS, I can create a game. And here I am on the table. I'm just going to navigate straight to that folder. There it is. And my cards are ready to pull in to Dexterous. So if I click, what is it, spread? There they are, all good to go, ready to play test. So yeah, as you can see, it's pretty handy to have something that is this fast. I think I've really appreciated it working with some publishers where it's like they say, hey, Gil, can you make this change to a game? I can be like, sure, and I'll be back. I can be back within a minute with an updated version of that. Yeah, so let me go back to the presentation now, see if I've missed anything. I think, do we get everything?
This is relevant here. When you actually want to make those changes, do you have to go through that whole process of setting up a new game and everything, or is there a way to update the files in place?
That's a great question. Yeah. So say if you're in TTS here, so actually fun story here. I have a friend who is developing a gigantic game. Like, I mean, gigantic. He has, I think, 3,000 double-sided unique cards, and it's a legacy game. So he has to save the game, and he has cards in certain positions, right? So maybe he set up the game like this. Can you still see my screen here? I assume so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's say I save this game like this, TTS test. Wait, that's not what I do. I name it here. Gets me every time. What have I done? I think I've just created a folder, have I? TTS test. Yes. Okay. Okay, there it is. It's right there. So say if you tested the game and then somebody's like, hey Gil, the queen, her value shouldn't be 5, it should be 4. It's clearly broken. What you can do is you can go back to Dexterous and you can change her. So I'm just going to go back to the Empress. I'm just going to change her value to 4 now. So she's 4 instead of 5. I'm going to export again now. And I'm going to create a tabletop simulator file and create the file. Now, because I haven't changed the number of cards or the order of the cards, this is already updated because when I hit export like that, I don't need to download the file or anything. I can just go back to TTS. And if I go, I've got to go to the main menu though. For some reason that refreshes it, we've discovered. So click create. Again, here I am. I want to load my save game, don't I? This TTS test. Load. Because we have overwritten the sprite image that this whole deck is looking at. So it's looking online and it's looking for a whole kind of a sprite sheet of cards, of images, and that has been updated. So the card there is updated. And yeah, that can save you a lot of time because if you don't have to lay out your whole game again, like in the case of a legacy game or even just a more complex game, not having to bring in the JSON is even quicker. Thanks, Ryan. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I think that does.
Okay, so moving right along, I was gonna share a bit more about the journey so far. How are we doing for time, by the way?
Doing great. We're at 8:40. You're probably running ahead of time, to be honest. So you're good. In fact, actually, one of the things I might just take another minute and ask the question about. I know that there was work you were trying to do to actually make it so that it's easy, not just to export to a digital prototyping tool like that. And I know ScreenTop is another tool. But can you also, is there progress on being able to take what you design here and export it to one of the print on demand services?
Yeah, for sure. So let me go back and show you that. So for example, I'll show you how to export this to launch Tabletop if you like. I've got a little demo here of cards. So this is like a different fantasy game idea. I can hit new PDF export. So this is a very new feature that is still currently, being worked on. And I've actually plugged in a few different printer, like popular printers with presets here. I'm just on the free plan right now, but I can tell you right now that you can still achieve basically everything on this plan. So you don't actually need necessarily these fancy bells and whistles. So for a printer like Launch Tabletop, for example, what they do need you to have is they need you to have a PDF that comes in as these single card images like this. So like a single card per page. They need you to have bleed of 3 mils. And they need you to have this die line. They are the main things that they have. You can have CMYK, but you actually don't need to. In this case, you'll actually see here that my bleed, this is kind of getting into the weeds a little bit, but the bleed hasn't been set. So if I dial up the bleed here, at the bleed, you'll see that I've got this gray border. So I need to actually go back to the layout and I need to fix this for bleed. So let me do this real quick. Wait, hold on. I think I was printing the wrong one then. I think that one, because it's got a solid border, will actually be fine. So I will just select the components that I want. I want the LTT export one. Okay, here we go. So this is what bleed should look like. You should see, I've actually got these areas here you can turn on as well. You can see that the blue line is the safe area. So anything outside, anything not inside that could potentially get cut off in a bad print. So this is probably borderline. They might actually send this back and say, hey, you should move things a bit more closer in. But let's say that I had done that and that was good to go. This is probably borderline. The red line is where my card's actually going to get cut. So that's going to be the die line. So now if I export and just generate PDF, that will make me a PDF with those things. And the really, really sweet thing is that the dial line will be generated as like a separate layer, a spot color, and Launch Tabletop can actually uses that spot color in their printer. So if I show you here, the PDF is here. It's just opening up now. Okay, so here are my cards good to go. I don't know if you know your way around Adobe, but essentially you can hit Control D to see like we've got embedded fonts here, so that's good to go. And I can open up this dialog here. It's been real slow for some reason. Oh, there it is. Okay, so you can see here, I've got the die line and the bleed line as well. So they have come in as their own separate spot colors. Anyway, all that to say, now you can drop it straight into Launch Tabletop. So here I am in Launch Tabletop. I'm going to add a component. So I've just made a blank project here. That's all this is. So you sign up with Launch Tabletop, make a project, add a component. I'm going to choose some cards here. And I'm going to choose my standard poker size. That's the size I had. 300 GSM, 18 cards. I think that's what I've got. Yep, this is all fine. I'll keep any blank cards. Add this component. So this is going to take a minute or so just to load in with Launch Tabletop. And you'll see here, it says your templates are being created and will be available shortly. But essentially what we're going to see in a second is that it's got two options. You can upload a bunch of PNGs. That used to be the old way that we would export. So we would export a bunch of PNGs from Dexterous, and that still works just fine. But it's just a bit longer, right? Whereas being able to export whole PDFs that we can just upload here is a real game changer. So if I refresh now, they've actually built a validation test right into their site here, which is extremely clever because it's going to save them a lot of time. It's going to save us a lot of time as designers. Okay, I think this is almost ready. But essentially what's going to happen is we're going to upload our PDF and it's going to scan it and see, is everything okay? So you can see here, upload your PNGs, or there's a tiny little grayed out thing. It's kind of easy to miss. I will prepare my PDF files instead. Thank you very much. So this is saying upload the PDF artwork, and we will go ahead and do that. And that's my PDF there. So that is uploading now. Now it actually is going to give us an error. I just realized because the die line, not the die line, the bleed line on. So you do need to take that out because they don't want the bleed line. Actually, is it going to? Because it is a spot color as well. This is interesting. We'll see what happens. It might not actually. It might be fine. But essentially this is going to upload, and then it's actually going to run its checks on it. Yep. Yeah, so whereas if you uploaded individual PNGs, you'd have to go through all this process of uploading them all, and it is significantly slower. So yeah, I'm really happy with this. This also works for different printers like, Print Europe or What's Games or ePrint if you're in Australia, for example.
So Gil, one of the things I'm just curious about. So I know that Dex also supports creating all of your card backs as well as a separate thing. When you go through this process, does it automatically export separate PDFs for front and backs to match the Launch Tabletop
Yeah, that's a
format?
good question. So if we go back to Dex here, I think whatever I had on was, do you know what? I actually had fronts then backs on. So these were my backs here. That's a fantastic question. So yeah, this is why the preset's handy. So you actually want to do the fronts only, and then you can see I've just got my fronts here, and then backs only, and then hit export. Does that make sense? So you just go 1, 2, export.
Yeah.
So this is, this is verifying now. So let's look at the review. It's probably going to have, okay, it says object uses RGB because I haven't used the CMYK. That's fine. I've actually chatted to the Launch Tabletop people about this. They can still print it. they can just do it themselves. And unexpected page count, that's because I included the backs. And resolution of color. Okay, so that's the other thing. If you use a little image like this, they're going to say, hey, we want you to use a bigger image, for example. So how cool is that? How handy is that? That's going to tell me, hey, you've got to go away and fix these things. So yeah. So then I would go away and essentially I'd have to replace this image. I'd have to actually do what Ryan said and export just the fronts, for example. And what's the other thing?
Change the image.
Yeah, and this one's just a warning. It's not an error. But yeah, extremely handy that they've built that in. I'm very impressed with that. Did you have a question there, Ryan?
No, that answers my question. I'm sure we're starting to get a couple of other people's questions as well, but I know there's still a bit more on your presentation you want to go through as well.
Yeah, no worries. Well, how about we let's do a little bit, I'll just speak a little bit on the journey so far, and then we can take, a 3-minute break, stretch, have a drink, and throw it open for questions. How's that sound?
I think that sounds good to me.
Awesome. So I'm back here on the journey so far. So yeah, I wanted to speak just a little bit on our approach to Dexterous. I think it is a little bit unusual in that we use the tool ourselves, hence these games on the side here that you can see. So Doug and I, like, we are designers kind of first and foremost, and like we're here for the long haul. We want to use this tool ourselves. So yeah, I think in a way that's a good and a bad thing. Like the bad thing is that, the app's a bit homegrown. It's not some professional tool like Apple might make, for example. I guess the upside of that is that yeah, we actually are quite involved in the process ourselves and using it in the ways that a designer would, which is helpful, I think. We have a MVP, so that's minimal viable product, fail faster approach. So you might be familiar with that, but essentially the idea is that you build something in its minimal form, you give it to the audience, very much like a game prototype, and then you make decisions based on the feedback from that audience. So rather than deciding kind of beforehand, hey, we think that the audience wants X and polishing X and putting a lot of time into that and then putting it on the market and realizing that, oh, maybe the audience doesn't really want X, they want XY. What we try and do is we build something that's minimal, we put it out there as soon as possible, even in an unpolished form, and then we get feedback on that. And essentially what happens is that our users tell us what they want. They tell us what really matters to them, and then we try and prioritize that. So I guess it's very feedback oriented in that way. We're also pretty grassroots and not salesy. Like we haven't ever done kind of ads, which has pros and cons. Again, yeah, we're not very good business people in a way, I suppose. But yeah, I think that has actually partly worked to our advantage in that all the advertising has been genuine word of mouth. And I think people who have arrived at the Discord, for example, have realized that, yeah, like we genuinely do want to help them succeed and bring awesome new games into the world. And I think over time people realize that that actually matters to us, and it's not just a venture about making money, for example. Yeah, so and on that, growing the Discord community kind of one reply at a time. I remember back when, yeah, I think maybe I invited my sister who's never used the tool to join the Discord, and a few other people who've never used the tool, just so we could have more than me and Doug in the Discord. And then, eventually somebody joined and we welcomed them and we tried to serve them. And then it's literally just been that for 4 years. I've been turning up to the Discord and just trying to help people. And I think over time, yeah, just slowly grown. And it slowly does start to take on a life of its own at some level, I suppose. So yeah, in terms of what it's been like, I feel like this image captures it pretty well. It's like we're going somewhere, we're on a journey. We are in a sense flying blind in that, yeah, like we can't predict the future. We don't actually really know what people all want. We can take good guesses and feedback and all the rest of it. But yeah, it has been overall super demanding, kind of like building a house or traveling into Mordor. Everything takes longer than we think. Doug and I joke about, yeah, like the things that we think are going to take ages take like an hour, and we're like, we should have done that a year ago. And then the things that we think are going to take an hour take more like, a long, long time. So it's very hard to kind of get that right in development. And our biggest struggle is often balancing new features versus stability. So people always want new features, but obviously we're trying to have a stable app as well. And that is a tricky balance to maintain for sure. And there's also this balance between the urgent and the important. So the urgent being somebody's emailing me frantically saying he needs this thing fixed, or he needs this feature before Monday because he's going to pitch a game, or so on. It seems it's very urgent versus the important things, and just navigating that, I find, it has been very tricky. It's hard, and I don't think we always strike the right balance. We have learned a huge amount on the way. Like Doug and I, when we started out, we were pretty fresh coders. Like we weren't the world's best coder, and we have come, yeah, just a huge, huge way through this project, and we've learned a lot about business too, and about, um, I guess, product management. Yeah, so it has been a constant iterative loop, and I feel like it's very much like a game. Like it's very much just learning from the feedback that people give you and putting the next prototype out there and seeing what people think. Ultimately, it has been hugely rewarding. I remember thinking that Dexterous has really shifted. At the start, it was like, I need to make something that will bring me money so that I can become a full-time board game designer one day. And I'm glad to say that actually I've discovered that actually helping other people make games is also super satisfying. I still do want to make games, but yeah, often when I'm feeling down about my own designs, I sometimes go back and read the nice comments that other people have left and be like, okay, I don't have to feel so bad about this. It's yeah, it's going somewhere. So that brings me to kind of like rewards. It has been really rewarding on an emotional level in some ways. In terms of money, it's not paying like the long-term things like superannuation or car repairs, but it's covering our written food, which is a huge milestone for us. And so we are both kind of now treating this as our job, which is really cool. I've said this already, but helping people is, yeah, super rewarding. I talked already about my friend who has this gigantic game. A lot of our early updates were actually based around him and the needs of his game, and making the app not crash when you have X hundred cards on screen, or that kind of thing. I met this other designer who has this rare sleep disorder, which means he can only sleep like 2 hours, maybe three a night, which is insane. And he has been making this game for 20 years, and he sent me this whole big message about how he was going to give up, and then he discovered Dex, and it helped him get back on track. And yeah, it's just really fun, I guess, to be part of, to get these little glimpses into people's journeys as designers, and and in some way I helped them in some way. I think that's really satisfying. It's also been somewhat of a sideways step into the games industry myself. I've got a lot of games that I do want to make, and it has been something that has helped me build lots of connections with people, yeah, all over the world, which is really fun, and that's only going to develop more. So in terms of looking forward and what we want to do with Dex, uh, I've always been super interested with it, and yeah, I guess on the horizon is things like schools accounts, like homeschool to uni level kind of access and full collab. We want to have some more advanced layout options, like layout variants or prefabs or sub layouts. So they're going to solve some particular design problems or challenges. Improve things like the board maker, maybe a deck builder. A lot of people who are making a CCG type game really want, yeah, deck building capacities before they import to another platform. There has been a surprising number for a rulebook maker. I'm not really sure about that one, but I'm going to give it again, put out a prototype and see what people say and see if it actually gets used. We really want to make eventually our own online testing platform. We're not going to try and compete with TTS or ScreenTop in the kind of player market, though. We're going to build something that is specifically aimed at designers and the kinds of the designers need. So, like designers and publishers, for example. And we'd like to run some game competitions in the future. I think that would be super fun. I'm really, really pumped about that. So yeah, that's just some of the big things that we're kind of moving towards in the future. And now it's time for Q&A.
I know that there's some kind of prearranged things that we can go into a lot more depth on. Gil's got a couple of additional kind of demos and tutorial kind of pieces that he's prepared. So I think that's what's on screen, right, Gil?
Yeah, yep. These are just various things that we can go into if there's interest, but obviously only people want to know about them.
Okay. We've had a couple of questions about kind of some of the more business kind of pieces. So I might just ask a couple of those myself because one of them was also before the thing. I know a couple of people have expressed interest in just understanding how big your team is. And that might be somewhat obvious after some of what you've shared now, but I feel like that would be really interesting to hear is how are you guys managing the business and how big is the team for such a robust product like this?
Yeah, it's just me and Doug. We just meet up every day and chat about things that we're working on. We've got a gigantic list that I'm like constantly trying to prioritize. And yeah, so it's just me and Doug. Yep. It can't really be bigger at the moment, unfortunately. It's not really quite enough to like fully live on myself yet. So yeah, but I would love to in the future expand, for example.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that leads into another question here, which was, a lot of game designers are really only having as a hobby. They equally are trying to have ambitions for it to be professional at some point, but there's concerns that licensing a SaaS currently seems sometimes a bit onerous. And so, is there any plans to offer a buy once, use forever, without updates licensing option?
Look, probably not in the near future. We might consider that like down the road. A big part of that is that we wanted Dex to be something that is always incentivizing us to work on it in a if that makes sense. So I noticed that there has been some other tools, for example, where essentially what happens in that buy once model is, and I actually have done it myself because I used to sell products as a teacher. Once a product is made and done and it's out there, if somebody's bought it and then that comes to you and says, "Hey, can you fix this?" But you're working on version 2, right? You almost have no incentive. You almost have a disincentive to help them with it, which has always irked me because it's like I don't like that. I really want to be incentivized to help people and always give them the best product available. So I don't know if a wishy-washy answer, but essentially at the moment it makes most sense for us to have it as SaaS. Yeah, but we have been very deliberate, I will say, in trying to include people, from wherever they're at, if that makes sense. So I know a lot of people are actually on the free plan and they're just making games on the free plan. And then we try to step up the subscription so that essentially you pay for what you need. Rather than, kind of aggressively having these ceilings where you kind of are paying for more than what you actually need. Yeah. So we have been very deliberate about that. But yeah, exactly. The Netflix subscription is a funny one because essentially you can just do that. You can just cancel for a month or several months, and yeah, and that's totally fine. And lots of people do that.
Well, it might be worth even exploring that a little bit more. I know we've talked about it at length privately, but I think one of the things that's really unique about Dexterous is that you guys offer a really robust free plan, and it's a free forever plan kind of thing. Like it's not like a free trial for 7 or 30 days kind of thing. I'm curious to maybe hear a little bit more about, or maybe you can explain to people how you make some of the decisions about what to keep in the free plan versus what to put in the paid tier, and how that decision process around keeping that kind of very open free plan, how that decision has been made.
Um, Look, the short answer is we want to be as generous as we can be without running ourselves into the ground. So that has always been a pretty big motivator for Dexterous. And, I've been a homeschooled kid for a number of years myself and went to school later on. And I know that, growing up, we probably couldn't afford to have something super expensive. So I think, yeah, I guess having options that people can actually do a bit, um, or download layout files if they want to, ways to work around it, I suppose. And yeah, be inclusive of families in that way has always been a pretty big motivator. I think in terms of business strategy, I don't know. I do have people telling me that having a too generous free plan isn't better, but I don't think it's been too bad. And I think in some ways it has, brought people in. Um, One thing that we do try and do is not walk backwards, if that makes sense. So, like, we don't want to like take away a feature. So we've tried very hard to have like essentially when you upgrade a plan, you are getting what you pay for. So, for example, it's only the really premium features like CMYK, or font embedding in those PDFs, for example, that you need to pay for. And that's because we actually pay like a ridiculous amount for that exporter.
Yeah.
So it's like we actually have to justify it in some way. Yeah, most people don't act that, but yeah, but that's actually why. So it's kind of like we're trying to say if you want to use it in a premium way, yes, you will need to pay for that. But essentially, we're trying to be as inclusive as possible, I suppose.
No, and we're getting some really good positive feedback for that as well. Give up the Netflix subscription and maintain the Dex one. Design more games and stop watching movies. Win-win. I've got another one here. The free plan is perfect for prototyping, has everything you need until you're ready for final production. So I think that really validates some of those decision-making pieces. We've got a couple of other questions here. When it comes to the game design competitions, have you given any thought to the kind of formats, either the theme or mechanics that you might try to go for?
Uh, yes, I have actually given it a lot of thought, and I think that the holy grail that I'm chasing is basically a game design competition that is self-refed 95%. And then, and when I say self-refed, I mean like designers are giving each other feedback, until we get to the very end point where it's like maybe the top 10 get played by judges. So the reason I say that is not because it's a cop out, but actually because you get a ton of value as a designer from doing other designs. So there's that, but there's also like the easier it is to judge a competition, the more we can have. The
Mm,
bigger it is and the more painful it is to judge and all that, the more it's like, oh, well, we did one that year. That was a massive deal. Like, do we want to do one this year? Oh, not really. You know what I mean? Whereas if it's like actually most of the work is all contained and done already by the participants themselves, and the judges only have to play 10 games. That feels to
mm,
me much more sustainable. So yeah, I do have specific themes, mechanics. I love hand building as a mechanic. I think it's massively underutilized.
mm.
So we're definitely going to have a competition on that at some point. Yeah.
Awesome. I definitely know that's something else the TGDA is expanding in as well. So maybe that's something we can further collaborate on as well. We have
Oh,
another
just to
question here.
clarify there, I just to clarify there, I don't mean designers going against each other. I mean it in a much more collaborative way. Yeah. So I'll have to explain that structure. but yeah, it's not just going against each other. Yeah, I
Yeah,
just want to
sure.
clarify that.
Okay. We've got a question here. Once a prototype is uploaded to Tabletop Simulator, is it truly open source? Can anyone take the idea and iterate it to completion?
Okay, there's a few things there. So technically speaking, just because you upload something to Tabletop Simulator doesn't mean it's open source, but it also doesn't mean that it's protected. And actually, the way Tabletop Simulator works, if you check your cache folder, every game that you've played actually has cached images in that folder. And I mean every game. So yeah, if you have real privacy concerns about your game, like you should not use Tabletop Simulator, full stop.
Hmm.
I will say as a designer though, that my advice to people would generally be that the protection you gain from sharing your game from sharing, yeah, your ideas with people in public spaces is actually usually greater than the protection you gain from hiding away. That's my personal opinion, though, and I'm not a lawyer, so yeah, you definitely want a second opinion on that. But yes, you don't have to put a copyright on it. Like it's yours. Like if you made the game, it is yours, and people aren't allowed to steal it. Does that mean that no one will? Who knows? I would say it's extremely unlikely, but yeah, I don't know the future. I'm not sure. So yeah.
I think that makes sense. I think one of the other questions here is, especially since Dexterous sees so many different games on being typed on its platform, have you noticed any trends in how components evolve from early idea to kind of finished product? And I don't know if that even extrapolates into any trends you see in game design in general.
I have seen some trends, especially in terms of visual design. Um, Probably the number one thing, and I have a friend who complains about this all the time, but the number one thing is that uh, people prioritize aesthetics over clarity is really what it comes down to. And I think when you're thinking about a game and like cards, for example, yes, it is a piece of art, but form actually does come, sorry, function actually comes before form in this case. So a classic one, let me show you actually. I can show you this thing. Check this out as an example. Look at, can you read the abilities on these cards? Like, okay, I get that they wanted the full art to cover all the cards, right? I get that. I totally like, I respect that. But I've got to say, like, it's just awful. Like, I can't read that, and most people will look at that and hard bounce off it. Whereas by contrast, if you look at this person's game, this was made, yeah, put together in Dex. Check it out. It's Sylvan Tactics. It's a really cool game, by the way. And it's still got the full card art, but you can see that it's been really thoughtfully constructed there. So they've got that kind of zone down the bottom. They've got some nice white shadowing going on. They've got some text shadow on the cards as well for clarity. They have actually zoned out the card there. And you can just see that I don't know, to me, and maybe I'm a bit biased, but to me it's just um, it's so much clearer and so much nicer on the eyes, right? So that is
Hmm.
definitely a pattern that I see when people are starting out. And it was certainly the case for me. When I was starting out, I would make much uglier designs, whereas now I go straight for clarity, and then you can make it pretty later on. Is basically what I'd say. And there is a lot of work that goes into making something look super pretty like this. Like this is very deliberate, right? These cards have been very kind of intentionally crafted. Um, like a little point you'll see here is that like we've got the brown here, and then we've got the inverted white on brown to brown on white. Just tiny little touches like that go a really long way. To whereas if you just kind of use random colors, everything looks less uniform and it's actually harder to parse. So that's the more experienced designers, you'll see they're using colors that are kind of shades that might exist in the artwork already, or they're repeating things in the artwork. That's kind of a long answer, but I think the
This might
really important one there is clarity.
this might go more into the technical part of that, but I'm curious with that last graphic that you had up, how much of that is likely created with like images versus the icon images versus textiles?
Yep. So I can tell you just by looking at it. So that is an image there, for example.
Sure.
I think I'm like, if I had to guess, this border is another image. That's a different image, right? This is just as that's a single zone down there, single text zone with white text shadow on it. That there is an inline class, I
Okay.
believe. Or actually, it could be an image. That actually could be an image. I'm not sure. You could do it either way. I'm not sure. Um, I'm not sure if that's answering your question. But that's that's a text zone there. That's a text zone there. That's an image zone. Whether this and this is an image zone, I'm not sure. But like it's a pretty clean design. There's not many. I would say there's less than 20 zones on this card.
Okay. I think that might be helpful for people just to understand like what goes into a final design. Um,
Right, right.
one of the things I guess to that same point about with a tool as powerful as Dexterous, there's obviously a lot of different ways that you can achieve the same kind of results. I'm curious, we've got a question here. What's the learning curve like? And to go from something that is really basic to being kind of fully proficient and professional skill level with the app.
I mean, I'm not sure. It's hard for me to say because I made it. I would say that I have people who are very proficient at it, like they might be faster than me. Um, and but they do tend to be people who are using it a lot. Like I think it's probably the easier ones out there. If I can say that, I think it really is one of the faster ones out there. I do have tutorials and documentation and that kind of thing. Um, you know, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think what I would do if I was you is I'd go to the layout editor, have a play around, um, go through the things that I did there. By the way, do people want the link to that? To those assets? I can post it here if you want it, or I can post it at the end. Um,
Yeah, I think we can share that now. We can
just
also
do it at the
share it
end.
after, but yeah.
Uh,
Um,
well, there was also a related question: how is IP protected? So
yeah.
we have Firebase as a backend. Um, so that has security layers on it, for example. Um, yeah, like anything. I mean, like Google Sheets, though. Like technically speaking, right? If somebody can guess your big long string of numbers, they can access your sheet. I think I will say again, though, one, it's super unlikely, and two, um, if somebody if somebody has access to your sheet and knows how to play your game from that sheet, then they are honestly a genius. Like I see hundreds and hundreds of designs in Dexterous, and I can tell you right now that everything either looks like a clone of Pokemon or I have no idea what it is. Like you can't actually tell from looking at the components how to play a game. Um, unless it's Pokemon. But yeah, everything else you can't really tell. You like, is this the tableau builder? Is this a bidding game? Is this I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. I'd really like to go through this next question here. Can you talk more about version control and how you think about it? There's a comment here, part of this question. Not every iteration is in a forward direction, as sometimes you may find you want to go back to the previous version or even just part of the previous design, in which case, how hard is it to access part of a previous version, assuming it doesn't overwrite each other?
Yes. So I can show you how that might work, for example. Um, so if you have Google Sheet, a lot of people who are making a big game that might need version control are actually using Google Sheets, and Google Sheets obviously has version control built in. You can just go back to any point in time. If you if you really want to go back to a specific build, what I'd recommend if you're using Google Sheets is actually use a different tab. Um, or you can just go back to a specific point in time. Like that's what I do personally. I just use the history. Um, if you're not using sheets, you can actually, like here in projects, you can download that project file, for example, and just store it on your computer. And that is essentially just all the tables here. So all the data of your components. So all the different card sets that you have, all these tables will be in that download there. And you can also do the same thing to the layout. So here, if I've got a bunch of layouts, I can click here and download the layout file there. So if I'm like, and you can use this to, to not go above your limits as well. So if you're like, hey, I think somebody said what happens when you need to create more? Most games have a limited shelf life. So yeah, you can just download them if you wanted to, for example.
One thing I've always been curious about is one of the, I guess, paradigms I'd say in Dexterous is the layouts and the images end up actually sitting kind of in like a global space and are not
Yeah.
necessarily in a space. Can you talk a little bit about that and yeah, how that works?
Yeah, for sure. So they are completely separate at the moment. So for example, my components here are essentially a group of tables, like which have data, right? But like say this one here, I can swap that out. So I could change this layout. I could change it for any other layout. So if I change it for this one here, I'll bring this in, and this one actually had a description zone as well. So that has been matched up. This zone didn't match, so it doesn't know what to do with that data essentially. But yeah, you can try on layouts like clothes. So I would say it's like clothes. It's like here is your table data, and you can try on a new set of clothes you want. What we have actually found though is that paradigm, even though it makes sense. So what we're actually going to do in the future is move all images and layouts to be project specific. You can still hook up components to the same layout, but by default, the layouts won't and the images won't be sitting in a global space. They'll be sitting in a project space. And I think that's what people are going to be more comfortable with. So that's the direction we're going to move in the future.
For example, a low ink version of your components as well.
Yeah, totally. You could do that. We actually do have on the page as well, like here, for example, we have some settings here where you can say if you're laying out your cards on a page like this. Say if I'm selecting my fronts here. So here are my cards. You can actually go ink saving, like fade everything. So you can actually choose your level of fade. Or you could, if you don't want to fade everything, you could just add white to images. So images are often the big part of the layout. So you can actually just fade them out like that if you want to do a low ink print. But you are right. If you wanted to, you could create a dedicated layout. Personally, I wouldn't bother, but yeah, you can.
Awesome. This one might be a bit specific. This one says, I'm one of the developers for a civilization building board game 7 Ages 2 that is just about to launch on crowdfunding this weekend. There are current discussions with the designer on BGG around card clarity. So this is a very real thing around text, visuals, and a trade-off of form versus function. I guess this might be a response to some of that other thing. Is there anything else you can would there be any suggestions or tips for somebody who might be in that process of just getting ready to launch and whether they should be considering using a tool like this?
I mean, just in terms of the form versus function thing, I would say that I don't think I've ever seen someone have cards that are too clear. Whereas I've seen hundreds of cards that weren't clear enough. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, like okay, so one really easy trick you can use, consider this full card art here, right? Can you read that text? No, you can't. It's hard to read, right? I just grabbed these random free images that I found just to illustrate this. And now I can show you a really easy trick you can do. You can create another zone. So this is the text zone here. I'm going to get rid of the default text. I'm going to drag it down here. Now, what I'm going to do is if I make this be a black background, right? So I want to make that white text pop. I'll drag this below the text. Okay, so that has made it clearer, right? Now maybe you could get away with that.
Hmm.
But I can hear you saying, but no, Gil, that covers up the artwork. I want to see the artwork. It's like, okay, fair enough. So is there any trick we can use? Yes, we can. Turn this into a gradient instead. But instead of going from black to white, we're going to go from black to transparent. And have a look at this. Let me toggle this on and off. Look at the clarity. Isn't
Yeah.
that crazy? That is a huge improvement, and you still kind of get this full art effect. So that's one simple little trick you can use. It's like that's pretty easy to do, and that's without even using text shadow, right? So you can use text shadow as well, obviously. But there are some tricks like that where you can like drastically increase clarity, and your players will be thanking you instead of cursing you.
Cool. We've got another question here. Do you have a contrast checker built in?
We don't have a contrast checker built in. That is a cool idea, though. I like it.
Okay. And then the other question was related, I think, back to the export you did for Launch Tabletop. Do you have a way to manage the print DPI in a design tool like Affinity? You can specify what the export DPI is. Is there a way that you can tell in Dexterous without the validation of Launch Tabletop what that DPI is of what's being
Yeah,
exported?
yeah. So, for example, in a PDF, when you open a PDF, it's actually just inbuilt. It's one of the pre-flights you can run. Um, it's actually, to be honest, it's really easy to avoid because you just make sure that your images aren't tiny, right? So I was actually
Hmm.
using tiny images there, but as long as your images are, like, to give you an idea, a full poker-sized card uh, with with bleed, yeah, with bleed. Yes, with bleed should be 822 by 1122 pixels. So for example, if you try and stretch a smaller image over the whole card, right? It doesn't actually matter if you say go 300 DPI. There's not enough pixels in the image. It won't actually work. Um, so there's nothing you can actually do to fix that. You have to, that's why tools like, Adobe have upscaling. So they're actually literally adding 8 pixels in that case. So yeah, as long as your images aren't too small, you'll be fine. But if you're worried about it, there's a pre-flight you can do in the PDF itself. You can just Google it, but basically it will identify anything that isn't 300 DPI. So that's really straightforward. To be honest, most printers do check that anyway. Yeah, that's what I found.
Okay. Kind
Certainly
of
something
a
you'll
follow
want
on.
to. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, like, if you're going to print a prototype, that's the kind of thing that doesn't really matter, right? But if you're going to actually do a production run, like, you
Yeah.
definitely want to be asking the printer, how do these cards look? Does it actually adhere to
Yeah.
your standards? Like, 100%.
And kind of on that note, there's a question here about whether or not you can recommend a good source of free artwork. You mentioned having some commissions during your presentation, but you've also showcased some great free art. Um, there's a comment about not wanting to feed the AI machine, and so curious on your thoughts around how to source and manage the artwork for your game.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I've become kind of slowly a bit more anti-AI as time's gone on. Some of my older prototypes had a lot of AI art, and as time's gone on, I've just been like, you know what? I think I would rather have just stock art. So I now for my latest games, I actually just use stock art libraries. One that I love is the vector. What's the vector one? I forget what it's called, but essentially it's one of the top ones that come up. If you type in free vectors, you can find ones that are stock art that real people have made, and you can actually search by set. And I found that has been incredibly useful because then you get a set all done by the same artist. And often it might be like you get a crazy good license, like, it might be like $30 for a whole month. And in that month, you can download sets. And I find that to be incredibly good value personally. So, if I can get great cohesive art for a prototype for $30, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And the really cool thing then is you can say to a publisher, if you're pitching it to them, hey, I've actually bought this art, I've actually got a license to sell it commercially. So if you wanted to, you could actually run with this art. That's just a nice little plus if the art is
You can
good
also
enough, obviously.
there's a couple of other ones that are pretty commonly used. I think it's game-icons.net is a really good one for basic game related icons, little swords and different, damage points and that kind of stuff. The other one that's really common is the Noun project. I think they've relatively recently started offering some paid features, but they started out as a fully free open source. Um, uh, like they've got a massive database of just put in a word of whatever you want, and it'll come up with kind of black and white graphics, which is really good.
Mm.
Um, what else we've got here? There's a question here also on the Google Sheet import. You overrode those indexers by editing directly. How do you reconcile those changes and ensure they're backfilled into the CSV so you don't accidentally override changes on the next import? I
Yeah,
think what he's
that's
probably
a
about
yeah.
the round trip issue with that.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's a good question. So essentially what you need to do is you need to decide, am I using Google Sheets or am I using the Dex table? If you're using Google Sheets, you will definitely be wanting to make your edits in Google Sheets. And then you import, I don't know if you remember at the start I did this, you click refresh CSV and that will bring it in. Does that make sense? Yeah, I was just showing you in the Dex table there, just so you could see the changes reflected super quickly, just in the interest of time. But yeah, you definitely need to choose either Google Sheets or the Dex table.
is there
And I
is there
totally, yeah,
sure that like do people have to worry about if they make a change in Google Sheets that'll automatically get imported and vice versa? Is there a thing that you could say, yes, I always want the updates as soon as they come through
you
on Google
can't,
Sheets?
unfortunately. You have to click the button to import it. Yeah. It doesn't just refresh automatically. Google's got it looks like a rolling timer essentially. So it just updates that CSV link every couple of minutes. Yeah, and then so you do actually have to re-import. But that is
I
another
think
one on the list that we want, yeah, to do.
I think on my own experience, Google will like it's not quite real time, but it's very close. It's like a minute or less that it constantly will push out updates. But obviously, Dex needs to actually go ahead and import those. Each time you're ready to get a fresh update into Dexterous, you want to then click the update. Um, all right, we're still getting a couple of comments. I think we're starting to slow down on some questions though. We've got a lot of comments though, just really, really appreciating the presentation, all the insights, a lot of love for people who are already using Dexterous. Um, I'll see if we've got any more kind of last minute questions. Let's see if there's anything else here. Yes, on that last note, somebody else has commented if you end up making if you've already linked your sheet or your Google Sheets to your Dexterous project and you want to and you end up making changes in Dexterous, one of the things that you can also do is copy your entire table from Dexterous and then paste it back into Google Sheets. That's a good way to make sure that you don't lose those things. That's a good call. Think that might be it. If there's no other questions, we'll wrap up there. Gil, thanks again for all of your time. It's been really, I think, a very educational evening. I've learned a lot, both stuff, even though I've been using Dexterous for a number of years now, there's still stuff that I'm exploring and working through. And I know we've been talking, for example, about Flex containers for a while. And even though I have an HTML background or a developer background, that was something that I didn't quite think to operate that way. So that's something I'll probably actually go implement tonight, actually. So that'll be really exciting.
Awesome.
Um, Some last minute comments here. The product is really impressive. Makes me want to revisit a prototype. We're just getting a bunch of other things. Lots and lots of really strong appreciation, Gil. And like I said, I'll echo that for everybody here tonight, as well as for the TGDA. Final reminder as well, the annual general meeting is coming up this Sunday. If you're interested in not only seeing more of this kind of stuff, but also contributing to some of the other work that we do throughout the year, I'd encourage you to become a member. I also would really highlight that people should make sure to bring their prototypes to our next meetup. So the next one that'll be coming up is next Wednesday. From what you guys have probably seen tonight, that's more than enough time to get your next prototype up and running in Dexterous. We'll continue to publish some of these comments and the recordings after the fact. Thanks again, guys. We'll go ahead and end it there.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did just post the link there. If that's a copy link of the presentation, and in the presentation is actually the link to the Google's sheet and the Google Slides. So if you do want to, have a go at doing any of that stuff, feel free, and you can use the art for whatever you want because it's ours. So yeah, you can use it commercially. Do what you will. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night or morning.
Thanks again, everybody.
Bye.